Okay, I am back again. I am wearing the same stuff because I'm filming this on the same day. So I decided to film 2 videos. So the first one will be the last video I posted, which was a mini haul video about the books that I've bought recently. And this video is all about reading slumps. If you're not familiar with a reading slump, essentially what it is when you just don't want to read. Like, it can happen when you've read a really emotional book and you're just like, you just don't know what to do with yourself. You don't want to pick up another book. It can happen when you've read a really good book and you're just like, I don't want to read any other books, I'm done. Or when you just don't really want to pick up a book, but then your TBR is looking at you screaming like, I've got so many books to read. So this is a book. This isn't a book, this is a video. This is a video about all the books that I would recommend for reading slumps, and they're more in categories. So these are books that work for me. They might not work for you, but the categories might help you to discover books that would get you out of a slump. So yeah. Okay, so the first category I've come up with is a book on a fiction topic that you're passionate about. So for me, in fiction, I love to read about Greek mythology. So for me, something that might help me get out of a slump would be The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, because it's all about the kind of the fall of Troy and Briseis and what happens to her and women after wars, which is really interesting. It's a beautiful book. Other books that I would recommend on similar topics are Circe, The Song of Achilles, and 1,000 Ships by, well, the first 2 are by Madeline Miller and the last one is by Natalie Haynes, and I would really recommend those. They're really good books. So also this one, I think that reading on a topic that you're passionate about can really help you escape. Especially if it's fiction, it really helps to kind of get out and be like, oh, this is a world that I really love, let's put my energy into that. So yeah. My next category is kind of similar. So it's reading on a topic that you're passionate about, but in a non-fiction sense. So this could be topics like feminism, so Feminists Don't Wear Pink and Other Lies by Scarlett Curtis, or it could be about Black Lives Matter or mental health or loads of other things. Like, if there's something that you're really passionate about, a non-fiction book can be quite compelling because you want to read it, you want to educate yourself and know more. So I would really recommend that as well. And it can be a really good way to kind of kick the slump and be like, I really want to read this book because it's about something that I feel strongly about. So yeah, I would really recommend those 2. The next category is an old favourite. So a book that you really love. It doesn't have to be like a new favourite, it can be an old one, like from when you were younger. Like, sometimes just reading one of your favourite books can really help, because you're like, yeah, I love reading this book. It can help you see things in a new light. So for this, I have chosen The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, because I love these books so much, but like, they are some of the only books that you will find on my shelves with broken spines. But I love them, and I think that going back to the Hunger Games world is such a good escape, because they're just so good and they're so well written, and they really remind me of being in my teens, desperately reading these within 3 days, so to kind of get up with all of the stuff, because I couldn't afford to go to the cinema and see the Hunger Games. So I read all the books within 3 days so that I could kind of talk to everyone about what the Hunger Games was. But I ended up really loving them. So yeah, good memories. And I think, like, sometimes reading an old favourite, might mean that you read something that's potentially a bit easier to read, because I know that as I've kind of grown up, I've kind of drifted away from books that might be slightly easier to read, because I'm like, oh, I want to challenge myself. And I often get into a reading slump after I've been reading for uni, which can be quite hard. So I'm like, I want a break, I want to read some YA because I find it easier to read. That doesn't mean it's bad, by the way, I just find it easier to read. But yeah, I love this and I love YA books, and they do help me get out of slumps sometimes. So the next category is a guilty pleasure book. So a book that you might not want to read, or anyone to know that you really like. So for some people that might be romances. I personally don't have anything against romances, except this is kind of a guilty pleasure for me because it's just funny. So I bought this book because of the title. It's called Getting Rid of Matthew by Jane Fallon. So I don't really read a lot of Jane Fallon. It's not my favourite writing. Like, I prefer different romances than this. But the reason I got this book is purely because of the title. So my boyfriend is called Matthew, and I thought it'd be really funny to just get this book and have it lying around my room and see how he'd react. And it was just really funny. So he didn't react in like a weird way, but it was really funny to watch his friends react in a weird way because they were like, wait, what? But yeah, I actually really loved this book. So the plot essentially is that I can't remember her name, but the main character in it essentially has been having an affair with Matthew, and he eventually decides to leave his wife for her just as she's decided that she doesn't want to be with him anymore. So it's really awkward, and she's like, oh no, I've got to kind of act in a weird way to get rid of him, and it's really funny, but I really enjoyed it. So the next category is a thriller or mystery book. So I find that these can really help to get out of slumps because they really engage you, they draw you in, and you're like, I want to know what happens. Like, this book I read within 24 hours because I was desperate to know what happened. So it's The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I'd also really recommend The Guest List by Lucy Foley, but I think that thrillers or mysteries can really help because you just are desperate for answers. You're constantly trying to work out what's going to happen. Like, so I think it was really, really good to read these, and especially like this one is quite an easy read. So yeah, I'd really recommend this. Essentially it's about a group of friends from uni who go into like the Scottish Highlands for like New Year's, into this cabin, and one of them dies and it flashes back, so you don't know who's died or who killed them, and it uses flashbacks to kind of jump between the night that the person was killed and them finding out that someone's been killed. And like, it's kind of like a whodunit and who's dead, which is really fun. I really enjoyed it, so I'd really, really recommend this if you want to kind of kick a slump. The next category is a funny book. So I think often, like, especially if you've just come out of reading like a really, really deep and depressing book, you just want to read something light. So I think that the books that are funny can really help. And I don't know where my copy is of This Is Gonna Hurt by Adam Kay, but I do have a copy of 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas by Adam Kay that I haven't read yet. So I read This Is Gonna Hurt last year, and I loved it. It was so funny. It was like really refreshing, and it was really sad at points as well, but it was so funny that I really recommend like finding a funny book, because it got me wanting to read again. So I was like, okay, this is funny, I'll keep reading it. And then after that I was like, huh, what's next? But yeah, I'd really recommend getting a funny book, especially if you've just read one that's super sad, because you don't really want to read much after that. But I'd really recommend a funny book, especially if you haven't read it. This Is Gonna Hurt by Adam Kay is really, really good. Talks a lot about the British healthcare system, and the kind of there's some funny stories in it, and there's some also hard truths and things that we need to fix in our healthcare system, so I'd really recommend those books. And then finally, my last category is a relaxing book. So for me, a relaxing book is a book that might not have a very strong plot, so it's just kind of a book that you like, that is quite relaxing, like it's quite laid back, the characters are quite chill, and everything's a bit like, it kind of flows nicely. I don't really know how to explain it, but it flows nicely without like too much happening, and you can just kind of sit back and enjoy the writing. So for me, this book is Cold Sunflowers by Mark Sipping. So this book, there's not too much of a plot. It's like this boy who is quite socially awkward, doesn't have many friends, isn't adventurous or anything like that, meets this older man who served in the war, and he kind of helps him come to terms with life, and it flashes back to Ernest's war days. And I really love this book. It was so relaxing and just lovely. So yeah, I would really recommend a relaxing book that isn't too plot driven, that you can just kind of drift into. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, maybe even like get an audiobook of a relaxing book so that you can listen to it and let it just like kind of wash over you, if that makes sense. But yeah, would highly recommend this. Okay, so that is it for my reading slump recommendations. If you have any recommendations for what you read when you're in a reading slump, let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, hopefully that will help you kick your slump. If you do kind of use my categories, let me know what books you put into them, because obviously this is going to change for everyone, and I hope that the categories help you. If you read the books that I've recommended, let me know what you think of them. Okay, bye guys.